seen a show shut down, that they would, instead of destroying the sets, as you were talking about, that they would go harvest what was still good and store it in these two warehouses in either person's space, and then people would borrow from it. And it ends up, not only are we recycling a bunch of stuff, so we're not just wasting, but also like companies that don't have money to, if they need 20 flats and they could never afford that, they're stored somewhere, and they can come, you know, I need a golden toilet, well, we have one in storage, strangely. And then they trade, you know, work or arrangement or labor for, I mean, it's just one of the things that having no structure and nobody to say no, if they just have a couple hippies who have an idea that and have the love to do it, then they'll do it. And I wanted to speak a little bit, just in being in an ensemble for 15 years, having this, what feels like a little moment where it's cooler and sexier to be devising, has been a nice moment within our, just our collective and the pressures that we have as individual artists, that to feel right now, I'll speak for our whole collective, that I think sometimes it has felt to other people, I know, you know, people who were not the playwrights or the directors, that, well, people like you, Kirk, because you can say you're a writer, or people like Sean, because they can say you're the director. But if Madge doesn't have a title, she's an artistic director of the Remix, but people don't recognize her. She's a tech person often. She now, I think, has a renewed sense of, like, she's a valued artist, and she has the same burning desire that everybody else has. She holds the artistic flame as sincerely and as lovingly as everybody else, and now she can share in the same sort of pride of ownership, of you know, of artistry. And it's been great to be in this moment that it feels like in the last 3, 4, 5 years, to have the full, the idea that the whole collective is recognized, not the titles that are easier to recognize.
Can I ask you, did you know, and then we'll come to this, Sabrina, but do you know, so in the last 3 to 4 to 5 years, it's been like there's a bright spot somewhere in there that was cloned, right? I mean, if it's grown like that,
yeah.
Where did that come from? What's the seed of that? Is it City and Worcester being out there all these years breaking doors? Is it you know, an intervention of a funder or a specific artist that broke something through?
I mean, it's great to talk about this city specifically, because across the nation, somehow, I don't even remember how it happened, but the city, mainly through Darren West first, and then through Brian Scott, who's now a company member of the Rubex as well, they shared knowledge and information about how, I mean, we didn't know how to manage relationships over time, and so people who are our mentors and our you know, seniors could explain to us, like, oh yeah, you're having that fight, cool, so here's how this works, or, you know, and both artistically, like working with how you load in or how you deal with the lighting designer who has dramaturgical notes that are badass, which Brian Scott often has. Like, just, I mean, the same thing that happened in Austin with 2 people get together and share this idea has also happened from other people in the world. And I know the City Company was a great mentor to us, just talking to us through emotional issues and through, like, how you run a tech as a collective. You know, if the director's not the most powerful voice. Although I swear, I think that we can run a more efficient meeting with 5 artistic directors than most other organizations.
I was going to say, there's a sort of historical period, I think, in early women's theater where things are being devised and being created collectively. And what happened was, at a certain point, some of that got noticed, and there was such a pressure in the marketplace to declare who wrote it, that it pulled apart some of those collaborations. And I think, I always think about that as a great warning. To us, to not let that happen, especially if there is a time where it is becoming more abundance, to not let it get parsed in a way, but to stay in that collective, to beware the star making in that sense. Another light that I've found has been in the network of ensemble theaters, and there are a lot of things that we've been doing. There have been net nights in New York where ensembles will come together and do training exchanges that Lise Walker from Strike Anywhere has been organizing. We've been doing these microfests around the country. There's still room in my car if anybody wants to go from here to Philly. We have one on genre crossing and defying work. So those kinds of exchanges, there now are ensemble-to-ensemble collaborations that are happening. We're starting to do, I think, critical response to each other's work. So a lot of different things happening, I think, on that front. And also we're starting to think about peer presenting. And there have been some...
Peer presenting?
Peer presenting and ensemble-to-ensemble presenting. One of the effects of that is it really helps your audience place your work in a context, in a larger context. And we found that enormously beneficial. It broadens their ability to see what you're doing, which can allow further risk-taking, I think. It also gives ensembles another audience to play to, and I think they learn a lot from that as well. And So there have been some consortiums that people have been trying to present, 3 different ensembles to present the same work at 3 different very different locations. So looking at lots of structures like that. And then one of the structures I'm really interested in, because we do it a lot at the Co-Festival, where I am, is the time away. Because I think one of the things that's hardest for ensembles in devising work are all the distractions of daily life. So what we constantly hear is that 6 days in the country, outside the city, or just away from all the other things. And now we've learned that we need to perhaps provide childcare more often to make this focus possible, is worth maybe a month of rehearsal time in people's daily lives. There's something about going away. So if we're looking at fiscal efficiency, maybe there's something to be said for that retreat mode. And also, one of the things we notice is that when people are next to other artists who are not necessarily working on their project, there's an alchemy that happens that way too. So it's putting people in an environment where somebody else is up against that brick wall and you've just had that breakthrough, or you're both against the brick wall on different projects, becomes very fertile ground. There tends to be exposure to more possible solutions.
Okay. And Jim, you jumped to the table.
Only because there was an empty seat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amen.
No, I mean, I see a couple bright spots, and I might be thinking too macro about this, but my sense is that things like the way that social media and viral social media are promoting flash mob, and that there seems to be a new platform and interest and statement of interest in the medium of devised, or that seems to speak to what devised theater creates. So flash mob to me is a devised theater process, and a lot of the things that, whether it's the mall opera or these things that everybody's kind of been gotten by link somehow to the, I hope you've all gotten, like in Vienna, the Mozart Day, or these kinds of things, I think really speak to a need and a hunger for this, and I think that's really great. And I think on the other end of the spectrum, the success of Tate Modern and the Fourth Plimth series and the Turbine Hall series and an embracing of ephemera as a movement in the high art world is sort of speaking to the demand and interest in that form from a completely opposite point of view. And likewise, I think that within the rhetoric of theater companies, there's a greater sophistication to what does community mean, and what does public space mean, and how do we engage those things, and there's a greater interest in actually getting to that stuff. I'm not sure that we're doing it yet, but the fact of us being here and that this is a subject that we're talking about also speaks to a shift in the tone or an embracing of the processes that devised work seems to be involved in. And I guess just social media in general is this kind of greater democratization of the process of making work and putting that work forward on a platform with high visibility. So I think all those things are bright spots or bright trends that I see.
Seems like,
You are.
Diane Ragsdale.
Student.
Thank you. Seems like Under the Radar was sort of it's been a watershed. I think when I think back, what that event did to not just, sort of raise awareness and introduce new companies, which is important, but bring people to that work that were not looking at it and weren't going to look at it. People who had the potential to take it back to their houses and legitimate it or legitimize it, right, in a way. And the press that event gets, that's extraordinary in New York. I mean, it's like you open the paper every day and there's an article, right, about this work that was under the radar until that festival. I mean, at least to, whatever, the mainstream. And I think that has been one of the most important things that's happened. And I think it's a real testimony to the fact that to remember, like, you can do it with something like that. I mean, it's a well-done festival. It's, brilliantly curated, but they intentionally worked with, arts presenters, and then I think once the public came on board as well, to bring these historically diverse communities together of presenters and producers that, Doris Duke Foundation has been, for years, had been trying to get these two entities at the table, talking to one another, and about the work that was falling through the cracks, and the work that could get strengthened, and that took, what year was Portland?
2002.
Right. And,
New Works, New Ways. Yeah, that
Yeah.
TCG.
Right. And it started, and it was like we all looked at each other across the room like, what the hell are we supposed to talk about? And, but I think that, it's really, I think, a testimony to Duke's persistence about that. And then, arts presenters came in and picked up on that, and Under the Radar started. And NET was critical, that festival. A lot of us, I think, went to that festival. So it seemed to me like there were a series of very conscious interventions that have moved us forward dramatically. And there's something to take stock, I think, in just the intentionality of people joining in on that movement.
Can we say a name? Olga Garay.
Olga Garay, yes.
Olga Garay.
It was Olga, yeah, no doubt.
Garay. In Los Angeles.
In LA, yeah.
Camilla, what are you seeing about it?
Well, it's funny what folks are throwing out names. I'm Camila Forbes from the Hip Hop Theater Festival. But as an artist...
Herself a bright spot, we should just say.
Oh, wow. There were two retreats. Voice and Vision was a really extremely pivotal program. I participated in their summer retreat on two separate different projects. And what was amazing about it is kind of what you touched on, the alchemy of artists that are there, and the open-endedness that of support that you're able to receive as being a part of the retreat. There's not, you create the structure based on your needs. So if it's, there was an ensemble company that was there that, had a very specific mission and vision, and they were in the rehearsal room all day. And then I saw another company, literally, they looked like they were having a picnic every single day from like 10 to 6, but that was totally a part of their process, and the retreat completely supported that. For them just to have space to be together and daydream. I don't know what they were quite doing, but I'm sure it was productive. And so, it was, Voice and Vision and New World Theater. New World Theater, yeah. Yeah, again, another bright spot, at least for the support of ensemble works, because I think, that's a company that's completely rooted in a community that also truly supports the development of work. So it wasn't just about the companies coming together, but as a company developing their work in cohort with the audience and the members of the New World Theater community, which to me was just awesome.
Megan, what about you?
I would say that a bright spot for City Company has been the last 18 years that we've been an ensemble together, and we've been able to create work much due to the partnerships, idea of commissioning relationships from funders to presenters to regional theaters. Every work that we make is put together in a completely different way every time we go about doing it. And we wouldn't be where we are today if it weren't for those relationships, if it weren't for the people in the early days, and even now, that have this sort of common belief in the work that we're creating, and give us a rehearsal hall, give us a little money, let us build their costumes and props and scenery in their scene shop.
So let me ask you, I'm going to pause on you for a second. What are the things that you would say as one of the you come from a company that's longest in here, or certainly in this room, in this work. What are the things that can be cloned from your experience that could have the biggest impact on the field? What are the things that have happened that are essential to your continuing sustainability and to your continuing sense of your own company as a bright spot?
I think